Hello, everybody. I am Rodriguez, and today we will be doing a quick little presentation. This will be part one of two, as we cover two different media sources, both of Schindler's List, a film from 1997, and Battlefield 5, a video game from 2018. And the core themes that we will be discussing here today are antiheroes and contemporary representation. So, a few of the themes that we will be exploring here today will be about empowerment, entertainment, education, and empathy. Empowerment is the representation of Jewish culture and women in the war, inclusionary practices that shine in representation, what they mean going forward, and what they meant in the past as well. Entertainment is the acknowledgement of the medium's goal of both films and video games as their primary objective is to, respectively, entertain us, whether that means through joy, sadness, for the experience of raw emotion, is how we as people are entertained. Next, we have education, the thematic display of cruelty and depiction of gritty events, both based on true and inspired events of the Second World War. Education is more so to be understood as the implicit understanding of war. Although we're not sat in a classroom, through watching the events of Schindler's List, as we will cover here in a few minutes, we will kind of get a good understanding of why media and media representation, through the eyes of an antihero, highlight and display issues within society at large, especially during the Third Reich of Nazi Germany. And last, we have empathy, the characterization of humanity amidst a time that human life was often discarded. We will be doing this through the eyes of Oskar Schindler, the protagonist of Schindler's List, and getting a better representation of the context of Nazi Germany. So, again, part one, we will be doing Schindler's List here today, a depiction of a paramount vision that clearly states the intention of the film. What that means is the imagery that evokes emotion within us, the viewer, the audience, is a depiction that defines the empowerment, education, empathy, and entertainment stated from the previous slide. So, getting right into it, we have Oskar Schindler, the antihero, and the various stages that we have covered from our course lecture with Allison and her depiction of what it means to be an antihero and the various different types that exist. Now, I'm here to argue that Oskar Schindler displays elements of multiple different forms of antihero, primarily two that stick out: the mnemonial, which is a more neutral and benevolent action, and cynical, a byproduct of a cruel world. As you kind of watch the film and get a good understanding of the character and the arc that he undergoes through his development, we see that although he was a businessman who had kind of neutral intentions and profiteered off the war, he becomes very cynical later in the film as he watches the clearing of the ghettos and the ultimate demise of many, many, many Jewish prisoners who were killed for seemingly no reason at all. And he lashed out in anger with sadness and rage and became more cynical of the world around him. And by the film's end, he became more of the embodied traditional hero from a developmental standpoint into taking direct action himself to save lives, employing that empathy from which he was educated by watching the events transpire. With the film inspired by true events, Oskar Schindler within fiction depicts the growth from an anti hero into the hero his real life counterpart would acknowledge. What does that mean? We're not fully based on real events, we are inspired by them. Steven Spielberg, for the sake of telling a story, somewhat altered the events in order to highlight and display Oskar Schindler as a anti-hero moving into a more traditional hero role. Next, we have the contextuality of meaning through Nazi propaganda. So, as we covered with John's story in 2009, we understand that contextuality has no absolute meaning. So context is where we derive and denote meaning. And if we are to consider the history of Nazi Germany from 1939 to 1945, the context was fascism. It was the Third Reich, and it's not to be understood as a part of German culture, but of fascism through the eyes of being a Nazi. So the media around this time highlighted a growing discrepancy of the Jewish population, growing resentment and hate that the Germans used at the world stage. So, with that being understood, there was an understanding within the context back then, and since we are looking at the contemporary vision with the rear view mirror, looking back upon that time, we come to understand it in a much different light, and as Schindler's List and both Battlefield 5 cover within their media context, we have a lot that we can learn from this previous text. And as we'll just get into now, representation is a big part of that idea. So the representation of othering, suffering of Jewish culture. So Spielberg set out to define and depict a gritty reality of both Jewish culture and womanhood during this film. Through the lens of a marginalized community, we are forced to confront the liquidation and destruction of 6 million people, right? The black and white visual scale, of which Spielberg uses the medium to kind of connect back with that time of the 1940s as the war starts to end, and the suffering that it conflicts with the contemporary time of the modern day. Various Jewish ceremonies are shown during the film, yet hardly any of them are given a direct focus that would last more than 5 minutes long. And although some may see that as a negative connotation of Spielberg's film, it more so shows that the implicit and context of the scenes are to be everyday. This is the culture of the Jewish people. This is what their everyday looks like. And it's a part of that normalization that gives them the credibility and representation that showcases that they are just people and giving them that agency to create their own change. And as we will cover now with women, the representation of Jewish women during this time period. Already within a powerless situation, women bear the brunt of keeping their children safe above their own livelihoods. Various different scenes within the film showcase elderly women, mothers, catering towards their young and keeping them safe and out of harm's way. They are humiliated and mocked, and Schindler's List makes a focal point regarding the struggle of independent women during this tragedy. Within the first hour of the film, there is a educated woman from Milan, and she had a bachelor degree within architecture. And the main antagonist, Amon Goff, he would go out to execute her in front of his love interest, and she, of course, would react negatively, looking away from him in disdain. But there is to be something said about a scene like that, and it is the underplay of women and their kind of goal within Jewish survival. So that execution highlighted immediately the Nazi regime as a patriarchy of dominant men who would use their power and control to control others, and they would exude this control over women, like in the case of Helen Hirsch. We will be watching about 2 minutes of this quick scene from the main antagonist, Amon Goeth, which kind of represents the great white male as depicted within that satirical article that we covered here in class, and how it kind of conflicts with Helen Hirsch and the contemporary post feminist idea of understanding independence, understanding role within society, and then breaking away from the power structure at hand. So we get started.
Although I'm not.
So, this is where you come to hide from me. Came to tell you that you really are a wonderful cook and a well-trained servant. I mean it. If you need a reference after
Notice
the
his
war at the
raspy breathing. and
I'll be
notice
happy
his
to give
body
you one.
language. He
It's
exudes
lonely
complete
down here,
control.
listening to everyone upstairs having such a good time.
He is childlike, he is ignorant, and yet he has all the
Does it?
power.
You can answer. But what's the right answer? That's what you're thinking. What does he want to hear?
Notice her eyesight here in this scene. She is looking away from him.
The truth, Helen, is always the right answer.
Although he says that, that is not reality.
Yes, you're right. Sometimes we're both lonely.
He is trying to connect and close the power distance between the two of them, and yet that does not work. Because she is exuding the one control that she does have to not look him in the eye.
I would like so much to reach out and touch you in your loneliness. What would that be like? I wonder. I mean, what would be wrong with that?
Ending the scene there, look at how his hands are folded. Look at the look in his eyes, the desperation of his speech. This is traits of toxic masculinity, and the danger that Amon poses to Helen is seen throughout the entire point of the film. We, as the viewer, are uncomfortable by his actions from what we've seen of him executing random women at any point in time. Helen fears for her life, and yet she must continue to kind of press. So, with that kind of being said, we're moving into our next kind of focal point as our understanding of Schindler's List kind of begins to wrap up. The themes at play and the implicit understanding of those themes. So, through the depicting of tragic events, we are shown the evil of the Third Reich, which educates us as media about the danger of hatred, the danger of what it meant to be a Nazi hating Jewish individuals in the representation. It caused the liquidation and the clearing of the ghettos and the clearing at Auschwitz, which resulted in 6 million people dead. The medium of film is made to entertain us. Schindler's List keeps us captivated and engaged to learn. There is still so much we have to do in order to kind of embody these feelings. And for many of us, it makes us uncomfortable, like that last following scene with Amon and Helen, where we are entertained by being uncomfortable, by being put into that power dynamic in that situation where we fear for her life, only to imagine what she must feel like in this exact moment. And lastly, we have Spielberg kind of representing Jewish culture and by extension the empowerment of women to uphold their sense of self despite the fascist patriarchy that would quickly belittle them, which kind of moves into the empathy of Oskar Schindler. And we see all of these events transpire through his eyes of all of the lives that he did save and all of the lives that were also lost in the process. So, as we wrap up from part one, going from Schindler's List and the implicit understanding of the film as a medium that conveys the ideas of representation, we move into part two of Battlefield 5 and a video game that tells a few different war stories. Here we'll be focusing on two specific chapters of this game of Nordlies and Last Tiger. Battlefield 5 was released in November 2018, and we are given a more contemporary vision of a loosely inspired event that portrays the war in the video industry. Through the designated chapters of Nordlies, the occupation of Norway in 1943, and The Last Tiger, which depicts the final month of the war in Germany in April 1945. But for now, that will be all for our part one lecture regarding the embodying themes of media during this time period. For part two, we will be looking more into the Battlefield 5 experience and what those missions have to offer in terms of what they're trying to depict and what they're saying about society at large. And then also in part two, there will be the conclusion segment that will kind of tie everything together and kind of give us that real world explanation into what lasting impacts may have about World War II and its media depiction onto the present day. Thank you very much for watching. I was Brody Brooks, and I hope that this was in any way informative about the two different types of media that we will be covering here in this mock lecture.